I took a second job, so we could afford IVF. His sister told everyone, "She's barren anyway. Waste of money." My husband just laughed. "She's trying." I heard it from a hallway. That night, I didn't go home. But what arrived in their mail 3 months later left them speechless. I met Craig at a mutual friend's wedding in Columbus. He was charming, smart, and the kind of guy who asked you real questions and waited for the answer. We dated for almost 2 years before we got married, and at the time, I really thought I was making the best decision of my life. We talked early about wanting kids. He said he wanted 2, maybe 3. I always wanted to be a mom. I work full-time as a medical billing coordinator, decent pay, good hours. Craig worked in IT for a mid-sized logistics company. We were comfortable, not rich. After we got married, we started trying. First it was casual, then more scheduled. I downloaded apps, tracked ovulation, watched what I ate. Nothing. After a year of nothing, I saw a fertility specialist. Turns out the problem was on my side. My egg count was low, and I wasn't ovulating regularly. The doctor said IVF was our best shot. I cried the whole drive home. Craig said, "We'll figure it out," and I believed him. But over time, I realized we mostly meant me. I was the one booking appointments, researching clinics, asking for quotes. He'd nod and say things like, "If that's what you want to do," but never offered much more than that. IVF isn't cheap. Even with partial insurance coverage, we were looking at $14,000 per cycle. So, I picked up a second job waiting tables at a diner 5 nights a week. I'd work 8 to 4 at the clinic, change clothes in my car, and work 5 to midnight at the diner. I came home dead tired, feet aching, sometimes too exhausted to even eat. Craig never offered to help with groceries or cooking. Said work was crazy. Spent a lot of time gaming or at his friend Josh's house. I figured he was avoiding the stress. Men don't always know how to handle things like this. Then there was Angela, his older sister. She never liked me. Always had something to say about my job, my clothes, my family. Her favorite line, "You act like you're too good for us now." She was the type who'd show up unannounced, dig through our fridge, and then gossip to their mom about how cold I was. Still, I went to family events. I smiled, brought casseroles, made small talk. I did it for Craig. I thought it mattered. One Saturday in March, Craig asked if we could go to his mom's house for her birthday dinner. I'd just finished a 10-hour shift at the diner and smelled like fryer grease. I wanted to crawl into bed, but he gave me that look, so I went. I changed clothes in the car, slapped on some makeup in the rearview mirror, and forced a smile. The whole night was awkward. Angela made a crack about how some women aren't meant to be mothers. Their mom asked if I'd considered adoption since nature said no. Craig didn't say a word. After cake, I went to the bathroom. I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter. On my way back, I stopped by the hallway to grab my purse, and that's when I heard it. Angela said, loud and clear, "Why is she working herself to death? She's barren anyway. Waste of money." And Craig, my husband, the man I was killing myself for, just laughed. "She's trying," he said. Everyone in the room laughed along. I stood there frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. I didn't go back into the room. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove. I didn't even realize I was crying until I hit the freeway. I didn't go home that night. I didn't answer Craig's texts. I checked into a cheap motel near the diner and stayed there for 3 nights. I told work I was sick. During that time, I didn't scream or cry or break things. I made a list. Everything I had contributed to this marriage. Every sacrifice I had made. Every way he let me bleed while he sat on the sidelines. And then I made a second list, things I could do to protect myself. I met with a lawyer. Opened a private checking account. Started saving cash tips. I also made a few phone calls. One of them was to someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 8 years, someone Craig definitely wouldn't expect. 3 months later, Craig and Angela got a letter in the mail that changed everything. And no, it wasn't divorce papers. The letter that landed in Craig and Angela's mailbox came from a law firm. The return address was stamped out of Columbus, and the name on the letterhead probably hit Craig like a punch to the gut. Elliot and Rains, Family Law Division. The same firm that handled his father's estate when he passed away. The same firm his sister swore she'd never deal with again after they didn't get everything they thought they deserved. Inside was a formal notice, a petition for a financial review tied to a possible claim on a disputed inheritance. That inheritance? It came from Craig's Aunt Marilyn, who died quietly in a nursing home 6 months ago. She'd left no children and had been estranged from most of the family. Craig had told me years ago that he didn't even go to the funeral. Angela hadn't either. They thought they were getting nothing. What they didn't know was that I used to work with Aunt Marilyn. Not directly, but at the same hospital. She was a medical librarian. I'd helped her during a billing dispute once. She remembered me, liked me. Quietly, over the years, we'd stayed in touch. When I told her Craig and I were trying for a baby, she sent a card with a $200 check and a note. "I hope your dream comes true." When she passed, the hospital newsletter mentioned it. I called the law firm listed and left a message. That's when I found out she'd left behind a small but decent estate, mostly stocks and a fully paid-off home. Here's the twist. Her will had a clause that said any family member who hadn't been in contact or showed any interest in her health or care over the last 5 years would be considered to have forfeited their right to any inheritance, unless someone could prove they had a moral or financial stake in her final care. That's where I came in. I filed a petition as a witness, a caregiver, and someone she personally acknowledged in writing. I wasn't trying to get rich, but I was trying to make a point. Craig and Angela, who both assumed they'd automatically get something after ignoring her for years, were now being formally challenged. They had to provide evidence that they maintained a relationship with her, or that they had financial need and moral claim. Angela tried calling me the day the letter arrived. I didn't answer. She left me a voicemail. "You think you're clever? You just made things harder for everyone." Good. That was the point. Meanwhile, Craig started unraveling. He showed up at my work twice, once at the diner, once at the clinic. The first time he begged me to come home. Said he missed me. That things got blown out of proportion. The second time, he was cold. Accused me of manipulating his family and trying to ruin people's lives over a joke. A joke. That's what he called it. That's when I knew I was never going back. Angela started posting vague Facebook rants about snakes and users and women who can't even have kids acting like saints. One post even had a screenshot of a private text between Craig and me about IVF costs. She blurred my name, but it didn't take a genius to figure it out. I took screenshots, sent them to my lawyer. They'd crossed a line, and they didn't know it yet, but I had one more move planned, one that would hit much harder and much closer to home. Still not divorce papers, but almost. About 2 weeks after Angela's Facebook post started, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, "Hey, we need to talk. I'm sorry for what you went through." I didn't know. It was from Hannah, Craig's ex-girlfriend from before me. I'd heard her name once, years ago. He'd always said it ended badly because she was too intense and wanted things he wasn't ready for. He never went into details. Turns out she wasn't crazy. She was just smart enough to get out before she wasted years of her life like I did. She told me she'd seen Angela's posts, figured out who they were about, said, "It sounded way too familiar." Craig did the same thing to me. Smiled to my face, trashed me behind my back. I found out from one of his friends that he called me a practice run. Said I was just there to boost his confidence. I didn't reply at first. I just stared at the screen. A week later, I met her for coffee. She told me things I didn't want to hear but needed to, like how Craig used to lie about little things to see if he could get away with it. How he'd flirt with waitresses when she was sitting right there. How he made her feel like she was too emotional every time she brought up something serious, like marriage or kids. And then she told me the most important thing of all. He always surrounds himself with people who'll back him up, even if they know he's wrong. Angela's the loudest, but there's more. His mom, his friend Josh. They all play their part. That was the missing puzzle piece. See, I'd been focused on Craig and Angela. But the truth was, his whole circle was rotten. I wasn't just up against a bad husband and a toxic sister. I'd married into a system, a little broken kingdom where everyone covered for each other and treated women like props. I stopped responding to Craig. He started sending longer and angrier messages. "You're punishing me for something you think you heard. We were joking, not attacking you. You're making this legal crap way bigger than it needs to be. And finally, if you drag my family's name through the mud, I swear to God I'll..." He didn't finish that last message. Just left it hanging. My lawyer saw it. Said, "That's enough to file a protective order if you want." I didn't. Not yet. I wanted him to keep talking. Keep digging. Meanwhile, the inheritance dispute heated up. Craig and Angela filed counterclaims. Said they were emotionally close to their aunt but didn't have proof because she was private. I submitted every birthday card Marilyn sent me. Every thank you note. A letter she wrote 6 months before her death, addressed to me, saying, "You are the only one in this family I trust." The court was leaning in my favor. Then I made my final move. I filed a formal complaint with Craig's employer's HR department. Why? Because Craig had been using his company laptop, registered to his work email, to send me threatening and belittling messages. I had proof, screenshots, metadata, and his company had a strict anti-harassment policy. I didn't know if it would cost him his job, but I knew it would hit him where it hurt. Money, pride, reputation. And Craig was about to learn that some women might not be able to bear children, but that doesn't mean we're weak. It means we learn to bear pain and turn it into power. Still no divorce papers. But they were in the envelope, waiting. 3 weeks after I filed the HR complaint, Craig was called into a performance review that turned into a disciplinary hearing. His emails had been flagged. Not just the ones to me, but to Angela too. Turns out he'd used his work account to forward screenshots of private medical documents from my IVF consultations to Angela as a joke. One message read, $14K for broken eggs. Unreal. That was enough. He didn't get fired on the spot, but they encouraged him to resign quietly. No evidence. No reference. I didn't have to lift a finger. His own arrogance did it for me. Angela, meanwhile, blew up online. Posted that I'd sabotaged her brother's future and stole their inheritance. She kept calling it their inheritance, even though they'd ignored their aunt for nearly a decade. The court sided with me. The judge didn't award me everything, but I didn't need it all. What mattered was they got nothing. Not a cent. Their claim was denied based on neglect and lack of contact. I was granted a small inheritance. Not life-changing money, but enough to pay off my student loans, cover a round of IVF on my own, and move out of the condo. I served Craig with divorce papers at the new address I knew he'd be forced to move into, his mother's house. Angela was there when he got them. I know because she called me from a blocked number screaming that I was poison and had ruined a good man. I saved the voicemail. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a copy of the final judgment to the same law firm that had handled the estate, with a note attached, "Thank you for helping a woman nobody believed in." 6 months later, I stood in a quiet office at the clinic and held a small black and white photo of a 6-week embryo. My embryo. It took one cycle. Just one. I sat in the parking lot and cried like I hadn't in years. Not because I missed Craig, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt whole again by myself. Craig? He tried to reach out twice more. Both times it was about money. Said he was owed something after all the years we were together. I forwarded both emails to my lawyer. Angela? Last I heard, she started a GoFundMe to help pay for legal injustice. It raised $38. Sometimes revenge doesn't come with a big bang. Sometimes it comes in pieces, a silence they can't break, a future they can't touch, and a name they're forced to remember. He thought I was trying. He didn't know I was just getting started. And now, I don't owe them anything. Not even hate. Just the truth. And the truth ruined them better than I ever could.